Now for our next segment of our bulletin, On the Table, and over to you, Mohana.
Thank you very much, Otto. On the table today, we discuss the midterm review of the 12th Malaysia Plan. With me is Dr. Afzan Nizam Abdul Rashid, Chief Economist at Bank Muamalat Malaysia, Berhad. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Let's begin with the allocation.
Sure.
So under the 12th Malaysia Plan, which runs from 2021 to 2025, now the government intends to fully spend the 400 billion ringgit allocation and in fact increase the ceiling by 15 billion to bring the total sum to 415 billion ringgit. Doctor, is it possible to increase the ceiling allocation with the country having a fiscal deficit? Surely we need to boost our domestic and foreign direct investments?
Yeah, I don't think that shouldn't be a problem for the government to raise such money. If you look at the compositions of the government's debt, they are mostly in ringgit terms. It's like 97% of them is actually in ringgit denominated liabilities. And in that sense, the government has that flexibility to raise funds and to finance the development expenditure. And me, as a financial economist, when I look at every time the government actually raise their funds through the bond markets, I can actually see there is always a demand for that particular financial instruments. For instance, like Malaysian government securities. So they've always been oversubscribed by the investors.
Yeah.
So there's a greater demand for that. So I think in terms of raising fund and to finance the development expenditure with such amount of money, I don't think that shouldn't be a problem. It's a question of how they plan to use it and what are the areas that can be lead to more productive outcome for the country.
Okay. Doctor, also during the midterm review, there were efforts to raise the halal portfolio with a target to become the driver in the international halal market with a halal export value of 63.1 billion ringgit in 2025. Now, what can we do to drive this effort?
Well, my guess is perhaps to increase the awareness among our MSME, the micro, small and medium enterprises, in terms of halal certifications, because I think the word halal, I think not just, what is being permissible in Islam, but how they actually conduct their business. We call it halalan toiban, meaning it's very comprehensive. It is manner it's being done to get the product out. Halal is one thing, but there will be certain categorization in terms of how they will be certified as halal business. So I think increasing awareness would be the key areas that need to look at, and especially among the small businesses, because if you talk to the Muslim small businesses, they would think, oh, we are halal already, but they are actually beyond that halal categorization that includes certain good practices in terms of handling their businesses.
And expanding on this, another initiative that the government is looking at is organizing the 15th International Conference on Islamic Economy and Finance in KL in December to deliberate on problems in Malaysia's bid to pioneer the enhancement of comprehensive Islamic financial system practices. Now, you're from Islamic banking background, so what are your thoughts? Can the country become an international Islamic financial hub?
Well, I think if you look at the sukuk market, our share, global share in sukuk market, it's like 40%. It used to be more. But because of the competitions within the sukuk markets, our share has actually dwindled down because of the new entrants from the new players, like from the GCC countries, from the Middle East countries. They have started to tap sukuk market in a big way. But at 40%, I think that's still a sizable, considerable market share.
Still significant.
Right.
Yeah.
So in that sense, Malaysia has that stature in terms of Islamic finance positioning. But I think beyond debt instrument, beyond debt financing, I think the idea going forward is to promote inclusivity And that's where the concept like wakaf, essentially donations, and also how the zakat, essentially a tax system in Islam, can actually be galvanized to ensure that there will be a more holistic impact to the economy. So I've noticed programs like microfinancing, iTakat, has been well received, and there are more takers among the bankers, and we can see the positive outcome from it. So if you look at the sources of funds to finance this program, it covers zakat, wakalah, and also certain funds from the government through matching grants. So I think
we're on the right track.
On the right track,
Okay, great. Now let's move on to the cash aid and the Rahmah program. So the indication is that it will be continued and improved to ensure the continued upgrading of the social security network for the country. So handouts are probably good in terms of how the consumers look at it, but there are those who are against such initiatives. So the Rahmah program, on the other hand, will continue to benefit the public. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think ideally this cash transfers program has to be time-based, meaning perhaps we should put a timeline. Those recipients of this cash aid would actually can elevate themselves in terms of the what we call outward mobility, social outward mobility, improvements in their economic livelihood. Perhaps their kids, their offspring can have a better education, and with good education, they can actually enjoy a better life, better income. So we need to ensure that the recipient of this cash aid on household basis, there will be some material upward mobility. So with that time-based, I think it will set the right stage in terms of how we should position the cash aid programs. But having said that, we need to understand also the impact of rising cost of living.
Yes.
So I think this cash aid really matters, obviously. It will help to alleviate the burdens among the low-income group. And there's also talks to, even it was mentioned in the midterm review documents that the government needs to review the subsidy programs.
Yes.
So if you can do that, I think perhaps there'll be more aid for the needies.
You mentioned upward mobility.
Yeah.
So 50,000 youths are targeted to obtain skilled employment under the Malaysian Skills Certificate by the end of the 12th Malaysia Plan. So Tibet comes to mind, right? But there seems to be a lack of interest when it comes to technical, vocational studies among our youth. Why is that? How do you think we can change this?
Right. I think perhaps, again, how they brand the program, because people, from what I can observe, people will associate TVET with blue collar, and therefore a certain type of living conditions, the way the lifestyle and whatnot. So I think we need to rebrand that. And I think skills like in automotive industries, in electrical and electronics areas, there's a whole range of TVET related skills can be actually applied by the students. And I think if they can do it well with the right assistance, they can actually thrive. For me, I think if you look at the number of houses in Malaysia, it keeps on building up, and therefore there is a need for electrical wiring and whatnot. So the TVET skills is pretty much relevant irrespective of the timeline.
Okay, always in demand.
Right.
Now, talking about subsidies, electricity, diesel, petrol subsidies and other social assistance will be restructured with the government looking at prioritizing the needs of the less fortunate, the B40 communities. Now, do you think this is achievable looking at our current state of economy, cost of living?
Right.
You mentioned cost of living earlier. So we're looking at short and medium term, or does it need to be a longer term subsidy program?
It's a very delicate balance, to be honest. Like I said, now we are still plagued with cost of living issues, but at the same time we want to ensure every assistance is targeted. So I think the government is leveraging on the robust database called PADU. So with that information, perhaps there will be more targeted subsidies that will be dished out to the low-income group. But having said that, we have yet to hear any what sort of mechanism. I mean, database is one thing.
That's right. I believe a trial, going to trial it out on in November, the PADU system.
So I hope that trial will be successful, can be rolled out as soon as possible. Because, as mentioned, subsidies, much of it is being enjoyed, especially for fuel subsidies, being enjoyed by the high-income society. So it's a form of leakages. So I think there's a urgent need to actually relook back at our current subsidy structure. So with robust database, it is hoped that we can have that more targeted subsidies approach going forward.
Okay. Now, Doctor, could you walk us through why is the midterm review important?
Well, I think we understand that post-COVID era, things are changing. Even I recall the launch of 12 Malaysian plans was delayed. So I think if you look at the past 2.5 years growth trajectory is a bit off from the targets. They are looking at 4.5% to 5.5%, but the reality is that the growth numbers were very volatile. In 2021, we achieved 3.3% growth. Last year, 8.7%. But this year, first half, 4.3%. So a bit volatile there. So therefore, they need to re-strategize, reprioritize the plans so they can achieve a better growth rate going forward. And understand that the latest projections for the midterm review, they are looking at 5% to 6%. So that's quite a tall order, but I think that's hence the review of the plans. Okay,
and before I let you go, we are running out of time, but I do have one final question for you. So how do you think this midterm review will reflect on the budget that's going to be presented next month?
For one, they need to really look at development expenditure allocation. You only have like 2.5 years more to go. So I believe there will be more allocation for development expenditure. Therefore, there will be more impact or outcome in terms of the relevant sectors like construction. So I think there will be more discussion on development expenditure the way I see it.
And that remains to be seen. We look forward to the budget next month. Thank you so much, Dr. Nizam, for being here and for sharing your insights with us on the table. Thank you. And that's it for today. It's now back to you, Otto.